Today, we are going to make some grass. No, I'm not in Colorado, so it's not going to be that kind of grass. It's our techniques that are so simple and sensible, your models would practically build themselves. Hello folks, it's Maddog Merv. Today, I am headed to my aunt's funeral. That's okay. She was really old. She lived a full life. We're good. She was 89. And the really cool thing about my aunt, well, she was one of those people that really believed in living life large. In fact, you know, on my page, there's kind of a motto I live by. Anything worth doing is worth overdoing. And live, laugh, and love life at full throttle. And you know what? That's what this channel's about. You know, all of these cool history things we do, all of these modeling things we do, all of these techniques and whatnot, they are meant to inspire you. I'm hoping that you get something out of these things I post on my channel. I'm really hoping that they inspire you to do something. And if they inspire you, go out and do it. You know, you want to go see that place, go do it. You want to go build that certain, project, go do it. Don't put it off. Get started now. If you don't think you've got all the tools and talent and resources, it doesn't matter. Just get started. That's what this whole channel is about. So today, we are going to review some of the things that we've done for this 1-year anniversary of Maddog Merv's channel.
We've sure put a lot of miles on the Mustang in the past couple of years, and I'll tell you what, this trip through southern Idaho was just beautiful. So here's my aunt and uncle. She was an educator for over 40 years in southern Idaho, and it was a pleasure to go to her funeral and represent the family. And while I was there in Pocatello, I stopped in to see a gentleman who had this amazing train layout, and that was a lot of fun. This gentleman's name was Al, and he had definitely perfected the anything worth doing is worth overdoing concept. So the drive up to Pocatello and back gave me a great opportunity to reflect on what we have done this last year. And we started the channel and needed a good brand. My 10-year-old helped me put together the brand name, and we ran with that. And learned how to put together an actual channel. We introduced you to the doghouse, the little studio where I do a lot of my work. And we also introduced you to the dogs that are at the house. My little Harold, my little buddy who's a real spaz, and Grizzly and the rest of the gang that you'll meet in different videos. We went and visited some of the junkyards that are in Utah, and we are actually going to do more of that coming up this next year. Mark and I went up to the 149th celebration of the Golden Spike, and we plan on being at the 150th, the sesquicentennial this year. That kind of inspired me to work on this little amusement park engine that we built. And speaking of modeling, did a lot of car builds this last year. We built this 70 Charger and kind of did a how-to on making the vinyl top. Built this wonderful 340 Dart and the Demon, and kind of went through the how-to of how we did that whole thing. And we went a little retro, went back to the late 70s, early 80s, and worked on this wonderful looking Volare. I like the way that looks. And went back to my past a little bit and looked at Mercury Cougars and this GTE that I made a model of. Turned out pretty darn good. I'm quite proud of that one. We talked a little bit about cancer, and during the month of October, how that is something I tend to commemorate because there's a lot of folks I know that cancer has really touched their lives. And we talked a bit about food this last year, and of course that's something that we'll always touch on because Maddog Merv loves to eat. Thinking back to modeling for a minute though, we did this charger, and this is kind of on a theme of the movie Christine. I think this upcoming year you're going to see Christine and a few other pieces from that movie. As well as we did this tribute to my friend that had passed away and left me some of his models. We got this T-Rex built in his honor. This year we started a new series on the channel called Echoes from the Chalkboard, where we go visit some of the old school buildings of Salt Lake City that either are still standing or are gone, but we kind of visit those spots. And we went to the IPMS show that was here local. Watched Mark try to sell some models. And also we took a trip to the Nationals and ran into an old friend and mentor of mine. And I'm going to try and get to Nationals again this year. We try and get there every year if we can. Speaking of annual events, Mark and I went to the Larry H. Miller Mopar show. We do that every June. It's like the last weekend in June every year, and we've done that for the past decade or so. Speaking of cars, we did a new piece about muscle cars that I've owned, because I've owned a whole bunch over the years. And in fact, sometimes I decide that I'm going to model those, and here's a model of my GTX, and we talked a little bit about that, but I've got a bunch of other ones that we are going to cover in this next year. Cars and car shows are a pretty important thing to me. Speaking of which, being out on the road, looking at car shows, this year we went out to the train museum that's in Helper, Utah. That was a lot of fun. And we went to the Ogden Train Museum. That Eccles Rail Museum outdoors is absolutely fantastic. They've got some great pieces there. We also introduced you to my dad and talked a little bit about his military service. And as you've already guessed, we're quite patriotic and very proud of the military service in my family. This year we went to one of the final races at Rocky Mountain Raceway. They've now closed the track. There'll be no more drag racing or oval track racing there again. So kind of sad to see that go from Utah. We did some tank builds this year. This one in particular where we rusted up a Sherman tank, and that was kind of a fun technique doing that. And then of course my Freedom tank, which is one of my favorite builds that I have. And this inspired me to actually start a new piece on the channel, which is my builds of the tanks from World of Tanks, because I have several of these that I've done. So we featured a couple of them this last year, and well, you can imagine there's going to be some more coming. This year we visited a couple of train shows, and we're going to be doing more of that in the future. So if you like seeing some of the local train shows, well, stay tuned. We started another new piece this year about tips and tricks, common sense techniques that are so simple and sensible that your models will practically build themselves. This is kind of a fun series, and yes, we'll have a bunch more of those. And of course, the Christmas season, what it was like to play Santa Claus, and the very first train that I've had around the tree in many, many years. And this has led to kind of a year-round build that we're going to do with this train board. So stay tuned to the things we do for that. And of course, visited with our IPMS friends and the Christmas party that they have, and just a great time with these guys that have been my friends and customers for years. And don't forget, 2019 is the year of the big boy and the year of the sesquicentennial of the Transcontinental Railroad. So this was a fun piece we did.
Wow, we sure did a lot this last year. I wonder what's coming up this next year.
Folks, stay tuned, because we're going to visit this year the world's most interesting modeler. Actually, the man who at one time held the world record in the Guinness Book of World Records for the amount of model airplanes. So we're going to visit Rob Humphreys sometime this year and look at his collection. And we're going to talk about great big tanks that we build on the table at home. Of course, we're going to have more of the World of Tanks builds that I've got, as well as some other tanks that I've got in the works that I'm going to be building. So stay tuned if you like tank builds, and particularly some of those that are from the World of Tanks game. They've been a lot of fun, and I probably have, 100, 150 tanks built that we can talk about. So you'll see some of those coming up. Speaking of which, we're going to get out on the road a little bit. We're going to go visit places like these navigation arrows here in the state of Utah. If you've never heard of a navigation arrow, we're gonna talk about that. We're gonna go visit some other places. We're gonna look at some railroad related things this year, being 2019, and we're gonna talk about some of the shops in Salt Lake City and some other great railroad pieces. We're going to talk about the Salt Lake Airport this year. We're going to look at the history of the airport. And speaking of history, we're going to have more of the muscle cars of Maddog Merv and some of the vehicles I've had. We're going to do some more car builds and some of the ones I've already built. We are going to get out on the road in the Mustang, and we're going to visit some areas, maybe some national parks, and we're going to put some miles on this baby again this year. Go to some places like Count's Customs in Las Vegas. So anyway, we're going to get into building some airplanes this year too. Got some airplane builds that I'd like to share with you, and we've got some new ones we're going to start. We're going to visit, speaking of airplanes, we're going to visit the Hill Air Force Base Museum this year too. So lots going on this upcoming year, and plenty more where this comes from.